Hello there, and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 35. Time flies, 35 already. This episode is sponsored by Sideshift.ai, Bitcoin.com News, Edge Wallet, Layer 2 Labs, and NoOnes.com. And we are live with Hunter Beast, who is the author of BIP 360, an attempt to make Bitcoin quantum resistant. And it's a very hot topic right now because there are some predictions that say or claim that quantum computing will get very advanced in the next couple of years. And there are also people who pretend that it's not really a threat, that it's just some general purpose qubits that are not efficient in cracking the cryptography behind Bitcoin, more specifically the ECDSA signatures. And we got to talk about this and also about the approach presented by BIP 360 because there are lots of ways of adding quantum resistance to Bitcoin. You can do soft fork, you can do hard fork, you can have some conditions there. But it's really good to have you, Hunter Beast. Let's talk about this.
Sounds good.
So, how would you define the quantum threat to Bitcoin?
Well, it's it's not real yet. It's existential. There are certainly concerns that there's a couple things. One is what's really difficult for Bitcoiners to appreciate, I think, is that quantum computing isn't sovereign computing. It's not something that you can just like go ahead and verify and not trust. Like it's institutional. It's something that large like businesses and corporations and institutions, organizations, like the very large institutions, it's only accessible to them for them to experiment with. And so it really isn't like the kind of thing that an ordinary Bitcoiner would probably ever, or maybe not ever, but for a long time, for a long, long time, will ever have access to their to the capability to verify that a quantum computer can break Bitcoin. But that said, that doesn't mean they can't. And it also doesn't mean that we're not already there or close to it and we just don't know it yet. What we do see is that we are being repeatedly warned by the American government that there are that there is a need to prepare, and as a result, um, the 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 American government and all the institutions here have programs and processes that they're going through to achieve quantum resistance by 2030. And this is like it's the kind of thing where like it's relatively trivial for centralized systems to hire experts and upgrade their systems and make sure they're hardened and audited and that sort of thing. Bitcoin, well, it kind of has similar experts, right? Like it has its maintainers, it has its BIP editors, and it has, all sorts of development activity and eyes on it. But that said, it's much more difficult to sort of it's much more difficult to upgrade for good reason, right? Like it's just if we that said, if we have a relatively trivial, low touch, narrowly scoped, not even fully focused on quantum security upgrade for Bitcoin, then it should potentially be our best chance to, uh, you know, mitigate against this concern.
Okay, but
Uh,
at the same time, it's very hard to agree on how to do it, even if there is consensus that this is dangerous for Bitcoin. Like, the
there's not
most
even consensus
efficient
on
way
that.
to do it would be to hard fork. because that's how you're certain that all the UTXOs have migrated to the system and there is no value in the old chain. And therefore, if a quantum computer breaks that, we have already moved on. But that's not really how Bitcoin consensus works. So you're going to want to have a soft fork. But the question is, well, what if the coins don't move, right? Because you're going to need everyone to move their coins into addresses that have this quantum resistance.
Well, and the four ways in which Bitcoin can, like a coin, can become vulnerable to quantum computers are by being in Taproot addresses, by being, well, essentially in any like Taproot addresses, reused addresses, and anything published to the mempool, and pay to public key coins. So any address that has a public key exposed that is potentially quantum vulnerable. And so what's interesting is about 90%, maybe even more, of reused address coins and reused addresses are active. So I'm not too worried about the reused addresses, really. That's something that we thought we might need to address in Hourglass v2, and then we looked into the data and it didn't hold up. And that, like, it's very likely that 90% of the coins from reused addresses will go into something more secure once that's available, and like especially once there's a major concern. Another thing is like for pay to public key coins, we could either burn them or do something like Hourglass, which would restrict the rate at which they're capable of being liquidated. But regardless, I'm not too worried about like the threat posed by like increased amounts of liquidity. At least like before I went to Presidio Bitcoin, I was a little bit more concerned about it. But then after Presidio Bitcoin, I walked away and I was like, you know what? We may not even need to do anything about this. What we will need to do is like a soft fork to prepare against the vulnerability of what are called short exposure attacks. So like, like pay to witness public key hash, pay to public key hash, like 1-3 addresses, BC1Q, those are all fine. And so any coins held in those kind of addresses are probably going to be fine so long as you haven't spent from that address yet. If you're using addresses, it's a different story. But because there's already like quantum resistant ways to use the chain, then I'm not terribly too concerned, certainly especially against like long exposure attacks. However, Taproot is vulnerable to long exposure attack, and so we should upgrade Taproot if we want to continue using things that use Taproot, like RGB and like BitVM, right? And like that's something I've been trying to talk to BitVM people about, like David Seroy, who was at the Presidio Bitcoin Summit as well, and we're BitVM depends upon Taproot to work, but it would be really nice if we could have a quantum resistant version of Taproot, which is what BIP360 is about. And that it basically, at this point, we've scoped it down so narrowly that all it does really is just fix the quantum vulnerability of Taproot to long exposure attacks, and also enable it basically allows wallets to commit to multiple scripts in the same address, so that way you can choose at spend time which script you want to spend from. And if you have knowledge of all the other scripts but you don't need to reveal them, you can just reveal them selectively. You can reveal scripts that commit to post quantum opcodes and post like quantum, like SLXDSA type stuff, and public keys and that sort of thing. And that's I think that's just like being really minimal, low touch, like maybe adding one single post-quantum cryptography algorithm, I would be happy with. And it would solve a lot of, it would make BitVM people's lives easier. It would make RGB fully quantum resistant, especially RGB 12. And so yeah, there's a there's a number of things that like BIP360 helps move along, move the ball along on. And so I hope that it's a pretty small and uncontroversial change. Of course, everything is controversial in Bitcoin. I shouldn't expect no controversy, but we've done our best to like reduce the how would you say, me and my co-author Ethan Hellman, we've done our best to reduce the attack surface for criticism against the change.
Is your co-author the same Ethan who also worked on Upcat, on rewriting it?
Yeah.
Oh, good luck with that. I hope Udi Wertheimer doesn't promote BIP 360.
I can't comment on that.
Yeah, anyway, to get back on topic, it's been known for years that the biggest weakness to quantum computing that Bitcoin has is the elliptic curve digital signatures. And
yeah,
there were proposals to replace them with, I think, the first ones that were being presented, and this goes back like 5 or 6 years ago. It was Lampert signatures, which are pretty large in size. And there's also Winternit signatures, which I'm not sure if they're any better. And I was going to ask you, which ones do you think are optimal for Bitcoin, and which ones does BIP 360 propose?
So the big problem with both of those signature schemes is that they're one-time signatures. So if you ever were to reuse an address that committed to a Lampert signature public key, then you would have like the risk of revealing your secret key after every repeated spend. And so to fix that, there's this algorithm that came out in 2015 called Sphinx, also now known as SLXDSA, and it essentially uses what's called a hypertree of deterministically generated Winternit's one-time signatures. And so it's like this like massive tree of Winternit signatures that is then like you'll deterministically select which public key to use at any given time. And that's why you can even provide entropy at signing time, which is an interesting feature of I guess you can do that with ECDSA as well, but it's just not, it's not often, like, it's funny, oftentimes like APIs will not give you the capability to provide entropy at signature time, which is annoying because you want to make that deterministic. But regardless of that, that's a common problem in cryptography, crypto systems, and pretty much like we always think of the entropy required to generate the key, but we never think of the entropy required to sign a signature. Anyway, that's such a nerdy point. Anyway, but yeah. Winternit's signatures, yeah, they're definitely relevant, and it's just that they're kind of like hidden in this hypertree of like signature possibilities, and that helps you. Like they create like 20 million, something like that, maybe even more, probably more, a lot more. I think 20 million is the minimum number of like public keys needed to like. Well, I mean, you can always set the minimum. You can set these variables in the algorithm, but it depends on like do you ever intend to reuse your addresses? If not, then you can generate a lot fewer keys, and then you can commit to smaller public keys and signatures, Or if you intend to reuse the heck out of it, or you want it to be very resistant to address reuse, then you can set the figure for higher. And ideally, we'll have like an opcode that gives you these like security parameters to tweak, so that whenever you go to like generate, you can generate keys of varying security, and that would help dial in your costs and help users just arrive at similar or whatever the needs may require. But of course, there would be need for a more involved security review of that. So yeah, Winternets and Lambert signatures they're relevant, but they're also flawed, and so that's what SLHDSA resolves, is the capability to use those public keys.
I want to ask you this. If we do have quantum resistant signatures and the different type of addresses that provide the quantum resistance, does it change the user experience of Bitcoin in the way that we have it today? Like the average user, does he require any kind of extra education on how he should be using Bitcoin?
Well, we might need that if we use something like Taj Dreja's commit reveal scheme that he proposed and in the Pursuit of Bitcoin Quantum Summit, which I highly recommend watching. It was I think that was on the first day. Yeah, it was later the first day, and it was it would basically require you to commit in advance to like funds in and output, and then like basically commit to spending before actually spending. And so that's like an additional step, I think, to the whole process of using Bitcoin, which might make sense if it's actively under quantum attack, because because commit reveals, Taj commit reveal scheme does protect against short exposure attacks, which would be like kind of like the big problem if there were sufficiently advanced quantum computers. But like very, very advanced quantum computers, I should say, like not even like bare minimum. Bare minimum would be long exposure attacks, right? And so as far as like other things, there might be like for BIP360, there might be a switch in the wallet that says like dial your security, like how much do you want, how secure you want this to be versus like how much value it has and how much it'll cost to spend in the future. And it turns out they're even discussing making Bitcoin transactions 10 times cheaper than the bare minimum, right? So like it's gotten that bad that the mempool is like that empty. We're like we're seeing like maybe 10 blocks of 0.1 sat per byte transactions, and then like maybe one, that's 1%, one sat per byte. That's a cool update by the mempool team. Kudos to them. But yeah, it just shows like where the fee market is, and like so if that's where it is now, then it certainly makes sense to like allow people to commit to it in advance, like kind of like price in advance their spends. Generating an address is actually quite minimal though. Like addresses are like when you commit to an address and you spend to that, you put that in your output script, then your script pub key, I think that's what it's called. Then you'll you won't need to spend much to do that. It's only about like 34 bytes of data, whereas like an actual post quantum signature will be something like 4,000 to 8,000 bytes. Actually, post quantum signature pair. public key and signature pair. So that's everything you need to spend. So it's not just this, like some people say, like it's like they look at the signature size and they look at that and it's like, but then they also forget to look at the public key size. Public key size in S16 is actually not quite large either. It's just a commitment to the root of the hypertree, right? The Merkle root of the hypertree. And so there's like a lot that you can do with that. But that's only like for S16DSA 128S, 120S, it would be a 32 byte commitment. And so, there's like a couple like changes that you would need to make, but it's like if we went with BIP360, it wouldn't be a huge, like you could run with defaults. You could have defaults that are reasonable. It wouldn't be a significant departure from the way wallets currently work.
Right. It sounds to me as if a block size increase would be pretty helpful to get more people to use quantum signatures, quantum resistant signatures. But before I let you answer that, let me plug a couple of sponsors. Sideshift.ai is the place where if someone wants to pay you in stable coins and you don't want to hold on to that because we're in the middle of a bull market, you can basically put your Bitcoin address in there and send the receiving address to the person. Are you stuck or are you in pain? I'm not sure.
I'm just listening.
Okay. And you're going to receive your BTC to your address, and the sender is just gonna dump their stable coins to Sideshift, and they know what to do with it next. Or if you have a bag of shit coins, like I hear Ripple is up, and maybe you don't want to hold on to that because usually it's under $1 and now it's like free something. You can also swap that on Sideshift. So check it out. They have a lot of liquidity and the fees are pretty low. And Layer 2 Labs, what do you think about Drivechains, Hunter Beast?
Oh, they're actually pretty cool.
I'm a big fan. I think it's an idea that deserves to be tried.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I think they solve a lot of problems, right? Like I mean, as somebody who's building a sidechain, one of the big problems is like, what do you do with the treasury? What do you do with the funds that are pegged to the sidechain? How do you peg in and peg out, right? Like Drivechains comes up with like really good, secure solutions to that sort of like decentralize the how would you say the custody responsibility. So it basically makes like unruggable sidechains in a way, right? Like so long as you trust in the fact that the protocol is implemented correctly, that it's that like the drive chain protocol won't just like have a bug in it or some kind of flaw introduced and then just like rug all the people who are in the sidechain. But regardless of that possibility, if you have an audited, dependable sidechain protocol, then you could scale Bitcoin and get Bitcoin miners fees to like for that scale. And so that in many ways like kind of puts to bed the like, do we need to scale Bitcoin problem for a long time at least. And it's a pretty like like I would say elegant solution to that problem. For post-quantum cryptography, I don't think we need to increase the block size necessarily ever really, just because like for one, I mean, you see that where the current fee market is. Of course, it's not going to be that way forever, and hopefully it isn't, because then the sustainability of Bitcoin is in concern if that is the case. But that's why like Drivechains makes a lot of sense, because that then allows you to scale Bitcoin and then drive fees to miners to help secure it. And that there's also the other possibility is to just implement something called BitZip, which is a way to do like kind of like a a block-wide cross-transaction compression algorithm that is post-quantum resistant and or uses post-quantum cryptography. It scales post-quantum cryptography, and BitZip would essentially use ZK Starks, and that would be done at a miner, at like a block level by the miner, to aggregate those signatures into the block and squeeze some extra fees out while packing more transactions in. And that could scale Bitcoin by a good 10x at least, which is, I think, pretty good, and we'd be pretty set for a long time. After that, like, Drivechains certainly becomes like more of an appealing solution, but I think they're already pretty appealing. I think that, but that said, the other thing with sidechains is, as with everything with Bitcoin, you can always demonstrate the need for solutions that could be built on Drivechains just without necessarily implementing them, just because you can do a regular merge mine sidechain, and not without blind merge mining or hash rate escrow, but any of those fancy features, but just like ordinary, just like merge mining, then you still drive fees to the miners, but you don't, and you get to like scale Bitcoin on that side chain, but you don't necessarily get the like kind of like you usually have to solve for that with a federation, and a federated multisig is kind of like, like putting all the funds in one place, and then hoping that everybody stays secure and follows the protocol rules and nobody gets rugged. Like, that's, you can do your best to put the work into making sure that won't happen, but there's still no guarantee in the way that you would have against that with Drivechains. So Drivechains, I think, make a lot of sense and would be really nice. I just don't know if we can have nice things on Bitcoin.
I'm gonna send this to Paul. I guess he will like your review. But the reason why I mentioned it is that basically the advertisement is for people to go to layer2labs.com in the download section and try the software which runs on the Signet right now, because it looks pretty good and it's ready for testing for anyone who just believes that this is only a theoretical proposal. It's there, you can use it. I think Litecoin is gonna implement it. Seems like it.
Wow, like Drivechains on Litecoin. Wow. Well, they do a lot of interesting stuff, right? They did the Lightning stuff. They did Mimblewimble, like, so like there's some cool stuff happening there, I guess. I wouldn't put my money in it, but that said, it's cool that they're willing to experiment with it.
Well, there's money to be made if you're capable of breaking it in ways that some people are fudding, right? Just like Upcat on Bitcoin Cash. You're like, okay, I think Upcat is gonna destroy Bitcoin because you can do this. Okay, do it on Bitcoin Cash if you think that's what's gonna happen.
Well, Bitcoin Cash hasn't been destroyed yet, even though it has Upcat, right? Like, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, that's one argument, I guess. I mean, Upcat, like, it would be nice. It would a lot more things would be possible. But I don't know if people want more things to be possible on Bitcoin. There's demand on either side, right? I would say there's demand on the side of people who want more things to be possible, and then there's also the people on the other side who are just like grumpy curmudgeons, or like kind of comfortable with the status quo, right? Like, and maybe I shouldn't be so insulting to the ossifiers. There's very good, Giacomo Zucco level reasoning behind ossification, right? Like, he's a very smart guy, and yeah, I mean, like, I don't disagree with most arguments for ossification. There's just like, but we do know that, like, we do need to fix certain things in Bitcoin at certain times, and hopefully we do that at certain times, at the times needed. They might be decades from now, but like we will need to change Bitcoin eventually. It's just like, and the more also another thing to note is the more value it secures, the harder it becomes to change, which is also unfortunate. But another problem is, like, the more people using it, the more you'll have actors who will try to coerce and force changes because due to their own personal economic interests. And that's something to always be vigilant about. And like, one of those concerns could be economic node runners that are then like trying to mitigate against quantum threats, and like, especially if their investors are pushing them to be like, like, my bank just upgraded, Apple just upgraded, like, my school's just upgraded, the government just upgraded, what the heck is Bitcoin doing? We need to upgrade. And like, if you don't upgrade, I'll sue you. At which point, like, then that gets weird, right? And so ideally we avoid this whole situation just by like being proactive, but I don't know if that's possible. We'll see. I might be pleasantly surprised. Like there are definitely like some loud detractors in the community that I've heard from, but like, and I hear your voices. I just think that it's retarded to not like do anything that would like if you see somebody pointing a gun at you, you will, and they're saying, dude, and somebody's saying like, dude, you're going to get shot, you should move. Then you should move, right? You should get out of the way. You should do something different. You should change your position, right? And so that's I don't know. That's just my opinion. As somebody who is highly invested in Bitcoin, I invest in nothing else. I don't have look. I mean, I lost all my Bitcoin in a boating accident, so I'm just starting over. But that said, I would never put my anything other than Bitcoin. And so, like, I don't want that to be broken. Like, I think a lot of people would prefer that not to be broken. Uh, I know it sounds like a fear-based argument, and that's like super unconvincing to a lot of people, and I'm sorry, but like the government really only has like a few tools to like warn us about this, right? Like, if they have the capability and they're trying to warn us, like, what else are they going to do than just like tell you like, hey, this is a warning, you need to be afraid. Fear is like people put a bad word of fear, like people think it's like a bad thing to like to reason about or think about or listen to, but like it's like an evolutionary instinct. It's gotten us pretty far, this far. And so I don't know, I just think it's a frustrating state of in Bitcoin discourse, as usual, as always, right? But we haven't even gotten a solution ready yet. Like, we're hoping to have one by the end of the year, but I hope I'm not this frustrated by then, because like it's only going to get worse. The more it becomes, how would you say, like sooner, like to the more it becomes like closer to the process of activation, it's only going to get more stressful. But I signed up for this as a BIP author, and so I'll try to weather through it and try to address any how'd you say, uh, critique of good faith. I just, it's also, like there's a lot of like paranoia in Bitcoin, as there should be, right? Like, only the paranoid survive. And I'm paranoid about quantum computers. I don't know, like, I don't know what the counter paranoia is to that. Really, I haven't really quite understood. Like, okay, so they're trying to force a change. The spooks are trying to force a change, right? Like, I don't buy that. I don't think that makes any sense. I think that's I don't know. I would encourage people who have that thought process to like think more critically about that thought process before just rejecting a change that would like make Bitcoin more secure. Anyway, that's all I gotta say to that.
Well, I can come up with my own conspiracy theory based on what you just said. You're trying to make Bitcoin transactions harder and more expensive at the expense of basically preventing an attack which is super hypothetical, because the US government tells you about quantum computing that's becoming a menace, while at the same time Satoshi's coins haven't moved, and for as long as they haven't moved, it's basically a proof to us that Bitcoin is secure. And the point of the US government, or the purpose, is just to keep the price down and keep investors scared so that they can buy more time to come up with their CBDC. There you go. A conspiracy
Okay, well,
theory.
okay, there's a couple of holes I can poke in that conspiracy theory. One is BIP360 transactions commit to an address that you get to choose whether you spend classically or you spend with a post-quantum signature. So like you would only spend with a post-quantum signature if you were worried about your funds being taken, right? Like if there was like an actively used quantum computer. This is like a further out commitment, right? Like something that protects you from much further out, but it gives you the choice because it's a Taproot script, right? And so it's you can commit to a script path that goes to a Schnorr signature or requires a Schnorr signature at least, or you can do a script path that commits to a hash of a public key that then gets presented in the signature. And so either way, like in the witness, I mean, and either way, like that, you have the option. It's always optional, right? Like that's I keep telling people like this is an opt-in thing. You'll only use it if you need it, right? Like you don't take the guns with you to the grocery store, right? Like at least certainly not you, Vlad, right? But like I shouldn't say everyone. There's some Americans here who would definitely do that. But regardless, uh, there's also another thing, which is we just passed the we just passed a law, and it was for making stable coins like Tether, like like legal here in the U.S., like fully legal, like fully like there are laws around it, and we'll see how that goes. Like how Tether responds to that, and if that's good. I think it's probably good. Like I mean, to be fair, I prefer stable coins that don't strengthen the dollar. Like Tether actually strengthens the dollar because they buy U.S. Treasuries and they back it with U.S. Treasuries, and they make a ton of money doing that, which is a very lucrative thing. Another thing you could do is create what they call it's something that Ducat protocol is working at. Have you heard of Ducat protocol? It's a cloudized deposition, and like you could just like have an MPC cluster that has goes over like a Frost multisig, and it just like yeah, Frost is actually we're gonna need to get rid of Frost if we're gonna be quantum resistant, but that's another thing. I was just thinking that. But regardless, if you have a multisig in an MPC cluster and you put some Bitcoin in it and you issue like a stablecoin against that Bitcoin, then you have like a price oracle and you have DLCs, discrete log contracts. You could that's basically the recipe for like a Bitcoin backed stablecoin, and a Bitcoin backed stablecoin weakens the dollar, not strengthens it. It's like it's shorting the dollar by backing it with Bitcoin. I like those a lot. I like that concept a lot because you're basically betting against the dollar, which, given enough collateral, is a sure enough bet. and you just never have to sell. At which point you're just riding out the hyperinflation of the US dollar, which is a scary thing to say, but as any Bitcoiner will appreciate, like that is it seems like an inevitability at this point. I mean, along with the Genius Act, they also had the one big beautiful bill that winds up spending $2 trillion deficits every year, and that's just like new money that the government's good for, that they will pay, that will enter the system that they never got in advance, and they're essentially printing it, right? And so it's without a balanced budget, we're kind of fucked. Without like fractional lending, or what do they call it? Like when you take broad money, base money and turn to broad money, right? Like that process, like private lending, like that. That's also monetary expansion, but it's not as bad. It's like the private money lending is monetary expansion is not as bad as government spending, in my opinion. But like maybe Lynn Alden has some thoughts on that. But anyway, that's. I'm not too worried about a CBDC from the U.S. government. I'm a lot more worried about CBDCs from the U.S. government is basically dead. Like with the Genius Act, like we've replaced those with stablecoins. Like stablecoins are going to be the CBDC equivalent, and that's actually not terrible if you understand that. Like you can have some, like depends which stable coins and what you're doing, but like you can have some privacy and some permissionlessness. And so it's there are infamous cases where where people have taken Tether from people, and then Paolo Arduino posts on Twitter is like, oh yeah, we set that back. But that's only really possible in EVM contracts. Like if you're doing that on like anything that's more Bitcoiny, like Liquid, then you probably don't have that problem. You might have other problems, but not that one. And they have confidential transactions as well, which is good for privacy. And so if you're interested in privacy coins, Vlad, I know you were on a privacy coin investment kick for a little while there. I would highly recommend an investment called LBTC. It's liquid BTC.
Yeah, it sucks. I would not touch that.
I just try to get
it's
you
a federation. I would not trust the federation, first of all. Secondly, it just has confidential transactions, which means you can hide the amount. You cannot hide the sender and the receiver. You only hide the amount. And that's already enough information.
Okay, fair enough. I tried. That's one try. I'll try to get you. I'll try to get you to buy Bitcoin some other ways too. Let's see. There's so you don't like federation coins. We need to activate Drivechains and then deploy quantum resistant sidechains, or privacy coins, like just that are based on, that are pegged to Bitcoin, right? Like that would be good too, like I don't know what you call, like basically like one thing I don't like about pretty much most privacy coins, by the way, is because that they aren't quantum resistant, so they look to me like a harvest now, decrypt later system. And so like that's something they'll need to fix. One way to fix that was a Starks. RGB 12 uses Starks now, which is amazing. And so yeah, that would be like because they replaced bulletproofs and Peterson commitments, which are both not quantum resistant. They both require elliptic cryptography in order to work. Instead, we have like ZK Starks, and I think that's a perfectly fine like compromise. And if we had like currencies based in that, like if you put Bitcoin into that might be useful or good, especially if you compare that with Prime, right? Like an alternative layer one that Dr. Lusky is working on. Then yeah, it's there might be hope there for Bitcoin. So for confidentiality and quantum resistance, and so, or not privacy. So
I think the Z sidechain or the drive chain that gets enabled with BIP 300 is much more interesting because you get Zcash level privacy with BTC. I mean, that's something that I want to see. Or ZK coins by, was it Robin Linus? I think it was him. That's also something that's interesting to me. Or shielded client-side validation, which is by Robin Linus and Jonas Nick and well, I know his face, I just don't remember his name. He looks like Andrew Polstra's little brother. No, I'm gonna get killed here. He was on my podcast two times, and I forget his name. I gotta look up shielded CSV, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, sorry, I can't help you. Yeah, like with shielded CSV, it seemed interesting, but the like one thing it just kind of reminded me of was just that like RGB is CSV also. So like and RGB doesn't require any changes to Bitcoin. So yeah, I don't.
Liam Egan. Okay, that's the name. Very smart guy. He also made Bulletproofs ++ and a bunch of other stuff that's being used in Monero right now.
Nice.
He's an actual cryptographer and works at Alpen Labs.
Oh yeah, very cool. Oh, you know, I've met that guy. I've met that guy. We've had some conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, very bright.
Yeah, very very smart guy.
Yeah, so I'm bullish on these inventions, not too bullish on using 2014 level privacy technology on top of Bitcoin where the sender and the receiver are public still. And you can see, even if you make a confidential transaction out of a UTXO that is public, you can still make some guesses afterwards. Like you get this initial black box. It would be very interesting if Liquid had active coin joins. I mean, that would make it almost Monero level. But it doesn't have the scale of Monero, and it doesn't have the users to actually care about this.
Yeah, I mean, Monero also doesn't really have a lot of scale either, if you think about it.
They have the dynamic block size right now. So you can argue that it's not really scaling, it's bloating, getting bigger all the time. But they're fine with this.
Yeah.
And it works. I think short term it's reasonable. I think Zcash is so much better. It's like a rocket ship, like state of the art cryptography.
Except it uses ZK snarks.
Yeah, but have you read the Tachyon paper? I think that's gonna come to fruition in a couple of years.
Tachyon? No, I haven't. What is that about?
Basically scaling ZK snarks to billions of users.
But what about quantum resistance?
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I guess they're gonna be adding it.
Hopefully they do that.
I mean, yeah, I care about pristine, actually functional privacy that is rooted in math and not just computation. You don't just expect the hardware to get better all the time. You make it more efficient. I love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's just like if it's not quantum resistant, it doesn't fit my threat model. I don't know why you're discounting quantum resistance. Like, do you like not buy the actual like concerns that are being raised by U.S. cryptography authorities?
Well, I don't trust the US government if that's what your question is, but I do think it's a threat. I don't know when it becomes a practical threat.
I'm
We'll
not
see
asking
that.
you to trust the U.S. government, but what I would invite you to think about is the government is warning people who protect government secrets. They're warning everybody, right? It's not just like a warning that's specific to Bitcoiners. They're warning banks. They're warning universities. They're warning anything that like keeps valuable, highly sensitive data. and like in the very least, they want to protect the U.S. consumer, and so like against foreign attackers, and so I would just think about the incentives there. Like it's not just like saying like the U.S. government isn't saying anything about Bitcoin. Like they're saying that quantum computers are a threat to elliptic curve cryptography, which Bitcoin happens to use. And so and not just Bitcoin, but like all these things we've just been talking about, like uh, Zcash and Monero and all these, like bulletproof piercing, all that stuff is like if elliptic cryptography is broken, you get inflation bugs in all those other systems, and so it's really bad. And so especially the Mimblewimble coins, like those are not in good spot unless they adopt maybe some kind of ZK range proof or something. But regardless, it's it's I don't like I totally get like there's every reason to distrust the U.S. government. They've done some really bad stuff in the past, but and they will continue to do so. I just and they somehow have stumbled into a way to break Bitcoin because they can't help themselves but do a bunch of really bad stuff, and so it's almost like in a way I would like to say that I'd like to think that like because you shouldn't trust the U.S. government, you should upgrade Bitcoin and heed their warnings that they accidentally fucked up and they made something really terrible. Like it's the kind of thing like we had the Manhattan Project. It's 1945. They have a bomb, and they're like they have this bomb now, and I don't know if they. I'm not a history buff, so I don't know if they actually warned Japan before dropping the bomb. I don't think they did. But regardless, this would be the warning before you drop the bomb, right? Like, and of course, I'm not saying that the U.S. government's going to attack Bitcoin, but they could fund an attack on Bitcoin. Like, they could, right? They could attack Bitcoin, and like that's the other thing is like, if you're really worried about the U.S. government, they're warning you that elliptic curve cryptography is broken, and they have basically every capability to attack Bitcoin. We should upgrade Bitcoin. We should do something. I don't know. It just I keep coming back to that. Like feel free to like push back on that or make maybe make me like I don't know, like make me think about that more. But like I keep coming back to the fact that like we need to upgrade Bitcoin to solve for its quantum resistance because the U.S. government is very much warning everybody that elliptic curve cryptography will be broken soon.
Well, I would frame this differently because it's not the US government that is building, or not the only builder of this quantum computer. It's also China. So it might as well be the Chinese government, or it could be Google or IBM. I'm
Right.
looking at the stats right now. I think the most powerful quantum computer is the one that's built by IBM, which is called the Condor, and it has 1,121 qubits. I think it takes like 100 times more to break Bitcoin. But assuming that the progress is gonna happen at the same rate, we have like 10 years or less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's plenty of time to upgrade Bitcoin, right? Like we just got to do it. I'm not saying like we rush or anything. Like it would be nice to have solutions prepared ahead of time, just in case we're caught by surprise. But I'm not saying like we rush a change like this. Like it's a big change. We need to think about it thoroughly, and maybe we'll even come up with something better along the way. But along the like before we activate it, right? And so just like think, okay, well maybe we should use that change instead. And that'll be better. Let's scale Bitcoin. But and by that I mean by BitZip, right? Like BitZip could be like a perfectly fine way to solve for post-quantum cryptography and scale Bitcoin and solve all the problems all in one soft fork. It's just not anywhere ready yet. Maybe within 5 to 10 years, we'll be much more closer to readiness with BitZip. And as a result, that would be how we solve for scalability and quantum resistance. But before we do that, we can use things like RGB. We could RGB technically would RGB with prime would technically give us the same, really maybe not the same, but similar, very same, maybe even better than BitZip. But BitZip would be pretty familiar. That said, yeah, I'm very supportive of Prime and any experimentation work on that. So, and open invitation to Dr. Olewski to talk about post-quantum cryptography if he ever wants to implement that in anything he's working on.
Yeah, I gotta fact check myself. So right now, I mentioned that the IBM quantum computer is at 1100 qubits. And in order to break ECDSA or 2048-bit RSA, you need about 20 million qubits. So it's not 100 times more. It's 20,000 times more.
I don't know about that. For one, I've heard estimates. So the way I would parse that is you need about 3,000 logical qubits, 3,000 logical qubits to break elliptic curve cryptography using the most advanced implementations of Shor's algorithm that I've seen, somewhere between 2 and 3,000. And then you need to factor in quantum error correction codes, which could be hundreds, could be thousands, may even be less. It could be as low as 49. Like that was one innovation that Google's Willow project came in with, was no, maybe we only need 49 qubits to a physical qubits to a logical qubit. And so it's possible that it may require only 50 times 3,000, which is 150,000 qubits. So I think in the 6 to 7 figures range would be a safe bet for when to be really worried about logical or physical qubits, and elliptic curve cryptography being broken.
Yeah, anyway, assuming Moore's law, which says that the computing power doubles every 4 years or something.
2 years.
Every 2 years. It's gonna take a while, assuming that this is true. But I think so far quantum computers have exceeded Moore's law.
It's possible. I mean, it's very early time in quantum computing development. Still, we're talking about vacuum tube level stuff. We don't really know how to do them all yet. It's all just experimentation and stuff. But I mean, what else was an experiment? The Trinity bomb. The one they set off here in the U.S. before they dropped the bomb on Japan.
Yeah, I'm not denying this. I'm just saying that maybe it will take a while. But I gotta plug a couple more ads, and then I'll ask you why you chose the number 360 for the BIP. Because I don't think there is a 359 or whatever. And there are a lot of numbers in between. It seems all very arbitrary. There's also a BIP 420, if I'm not mistaken, or whatever. But I gotta tell you about Citrea, which is a ZK rollup, the first optimistically verified ZK rollup on Bitcoin. They're gonna launch later this year. They have been waiting for CTV or whatever, but they were able to figure out a way to do it without it, just like the ARC people. And basically what they're going to do is bring a suite of financial applications that currently are not available on Bitcoin, like basically borrowing your BTC to get some stable coins. Lending, not borrowing. Lending your BTC to get some stable coins, or having other more advanced financial applications that today you only find on Ethereum. And I think the long term game for Citrea and also Alpen Labs is to get some of that liquidity that's currently locked on Ethereum as wrapped Bitcoin and make it work for the same use cases with the security of the Bitcoin blockchain. So if you want to test Citrea today, there's their website, which is citrea.xyz, and you can download the software to see what it's going to look like. Right now, I think it's on testnet v4 for Bitcoin. And also, the other sponsor that I got to plug is Edge Wallet, which I find very convenient when I'm traveling. It has this duress mode that you can use for typing a different PIN, which unlocks another wallet, which maybe has zero funds or maybe has only $10 that you put in there. So if anyone ever asks you at the airport to unlock your wallet, that can come in handy. And also, something else that I like is that when I'm at a conference, and this actually happened to me, someone said, I want to give you Dash. And I was like, I don't have a Dash wallet. Well, I have Edge Wallet and I can generate a Dash wallet within seconds, and then I can swap that Dash into BTC within a couple of minutes, maybe. So I think that's a very cool use case that they have, and you can download it at edge.app, which is edge.app. And now let's talk about the number 360 in your BIP. Does it refer to some sort of U-turn where you're doing something but you're facing the same direction?
Uh, well, it certainly wasn't something I picked. You're not supposed to self-assign. BIP authors aren't supposed to self-assign numbers, like Udi tried to do with BIP 420, which wound up actually being BIP 347. So yeah, they've skipped a number of ranges. Like there's no BIP that starts with 200. Like they completely skipped the 200 range. That was because they were thinking about maybe adding lightning bips there, and so they just kind of reserved that. There's a lot of reserved ranges. BIP 360 is like the reserved range for quantum stuff. So presumably there'll be a 361, 362 or whatever for whatever. But we'll see how that shakes out.
So it was not your decision? Then who picked 360?
Well, there's like this elite cabal of BIP reviewers that meet in secret IRC chat rooms, and they all just kind of make these unilateral decisions. It's maybe if we're going with a communist analogy, it's like the Bit Bureau, like the Politburo, but Bit Bureau. Like maybe we'll call it that.
Right, because I know that for a while it was Luke Dash Jr. who was in charge of the BIP process and assigning numbers and
Yeah,
basically reviewing the BIPs. And it was
yeah,
also, of course, a bunch of other people, but it was him who was assigning numbers.
yep. And then we involved all these communists, and now it's no longer Pope Jess Jr. that's doing it, and so it's we no longer have the Nazis in charge of the BIPs. They're instead, you know.
I think Brian Bishop is in charge right now.
Yeah. Brian Bishop is one of them. I haven't heard much from him actually in the review process. I don't know how active he is. The other reviewers are like Merch, uh, John Attic, and Ava Chow are kind of the ones I've interacted with most.
What was their reception of the BIP? Like,
Who's
did they have anyone? Like, was there any feedback from the high priests, the popes, the whatever you want to call them, the cabal?
Yeah, well, Merch was very helpful. So is John Attic. They both had very helpful review. Ava also gave some review items and that were tangible and useful. And then Ava also called it stupid and dumb. So
So
uh,
why
uh,
would it be stupid and dumb? Because he
I,
doesn't or she doesn't believe in quantum computing, or because the
Basically, yeah.
solution being presented is not the optimal one?
Well, there's a I think if it doesn't like really believe that there's a near-term threat, and also if there was a near-term threat, then like this BIP is worded way incorrectly. Like it's just like for what it does. Like we recently scoped it down, and so like it's not necessarily like a near-term threat that like it's more just like the everything that's needed to so like it does address the near-term threat, which is just to Taproot, right? But Taproot is only about 150,000 coins, and so yeah, it's just I, I mean, Ava's natural reaction just about everything seems to be that like it's stupid, but that's just it just seems to be the case. But her feedback was very useful regardless. I mean, it was harsh criticism, but uh, we definitely are making decisions based on it, and we're also always grateful for the attention and the review, of course.
Okay. Where can people find the BIP to read it?
You can go to BIP360.org, BIP360.org.
Is it any different than going to the GitHub on Bitcoin Core? Are there any other notes or opinions or justifications for the BIP on the website?
There are, and also it is different because BIP360 hasn't been merged yet, and so it's still in draft, and so there's still time to review, still time for people to chime in. I definitely recommend that people go out of their way to look it up and take a look at it and chime in on their opinion, but their informed opinion, hopefully. But no, all opinions are welcome, I suppose. And so, yeah, the so because it's in draft, it's I pre-rendered it using some the same software that bips.dev uses, which is a really great site, by the way, if you ever want to quickly look at bips, bips.dev and dev, and I basically forked the guy's work and then ran it over my own repo, and then took the HTML from that and put it on to the site, and with a little modifications. So it's easy to read. It doesn't have like all the tables fully rendered or anything either. There's a link to the actual like Git repo that has my BIP in it. It's just not in the main Bitcoin BIPs repo yet because it hasn't been merged yet. It's still a pull request.
Something else that I have been meaning to ask you is we have a lot of proposals for Bitcoin soft forks like CTV, CAT, CSFS. There's also the Great Script Restoration, and there are a bunch of others that have come and gone, like AnyPrev out. And anyway, my point is, do you think that any of these will make Bitcoin's quantum resistance better or improve onto what you're proposing with BIP 360?
Well, CTV is hash based, so there might be something there. What are some of the other options?
Opcat,
CSFS.
which
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken, there were a bunch
yeah,
of researchers, including Jeremy Rubin and
yeah,
Andrew Polstra, who have written articles about how you can build quantum resistance with Opcat.
yeah. That's another possibility. It's just the only problem is it doesn't allow you to reuse that address, right? Like it's only a one-time signature, and so well, I mean, you can reuse the address. You're just gonna risk the funds in it, right? Because like you risk exposing your private key, and so Upcat is like okay, I guess. CSFS like will need to be updated with post-quantum cryptography if it's ever implemented. I think that's a perfectly fine thing to do. But yeah, so there's any of those, like all of those have implications.
I think a bunch of Bitcoiners are still butthurt because they were psyoped into activating Taproot and they believe they're gonna have Monero level privacy and indestructible multi-sigs and Ethereum level smart contracts and whatever. And what they got is ordinal inscriptions. And I was gonna ask you, do you believe there's gonna be any side effects or unintended consequence to BIP 360?
Well, it's not much different from Taproot except that it removes a feature that's already in it. So it's almost like taking something we already have and making it smaller and do less, which is in some ways why SEPA is not too psyched about it. But anyway, it's not really adding anything new that people couldn't do already with Bitcoin. Like it's just adding quantum resistance to long exposure attacks to Taproot type scripts, and so like funds held in them. And so there's no chance that we're going to get something like some kind of surprise that will you know oh no, now we can't use elliptic cryptography with Taproot, so we can. I just don't know where you go with that,
Is this quantum resistance perishable, meaning that if quantum computers are gonna become much more powerful in the coming years, we're gonna have to update again? Or is this final and definitive in the way that it upgrades Bitcoin?
Well, we're gonna need to add, like, BIP360 doesn't even add post-quantum cryptography, right? Like it just gives us the capability to commit to that in wallets in a reasonable way, right? So to be activated later. So we'll see if that's ever activated, but that's like that's it's not definitive, no.
Right, so after BIP 360, if that happens, we're gonna need to constantly have updates every maybe 10 years or something.
I think that might be smart. Yeah, it might be smart. Yeah.
But for that, basically, we're gonna need to build a culture around it, right? Because I think the ossifiers have done a pretty good job presenting their case. And most people are lazy. So if
Mhm.
lazy people hear that we're fine and we don't need anything else and everything else is a scam and an attempt to destroy Bitcoin, an attack, they're gonna love it. So we do need, I think, honestly, and it hurts to say this, I think having a quantum attack on Bitcoin is gonna be the trigger for any improvement. That's what's gonna get people to say, well, we were wrong and we need to fix this somehow. And I think the only way to fix past an actual attack is to hard fork and use
Mm.
something that we already have and has been in development for many years.
Well, that's definitely a thought that ETF custodians have been having in their fork choice clause, right? So um, if we fuck it up too much and uh, the custodians are going to then want to fork the chain because their their bags are kind of worthless because of the quantum attack, then that's something I would like to avoid, right? Like that, and the way to avoid that is to be proactive and transfer your funds to quantum resistant addresses, and but yeah, it's yeah, that's hopefully something we can avoid, but your pessimism might be warranted. I have no idea. I can't predict the future. Most I can do is just try to give us good solutions for any kind of problem that we might face in that regard.
Yeah, there's also the risk of being the boy who cried wolf, right? You're
I
making
don't mind
some
that. I don't,
estimations, and then
I,
people will not take you seriously anymore.
look, like Bitcoin isn't about you, right? Like I'm not worried about like people thinking like 10 years on, it hasn't happened yet. Where's why are we soft working, Hunter? Like, you know what? Fuck it. Like I'm fine having job security for 10 years. Like that's great. Whatever. Like I'll, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, there's always a risk in being too early with something.
Yeah, and as they say, there's an old adage that like being too early is the same as being wrong. But we'll see. We'll see. I just think that it's just too big a like too big a problem to ignore. Like I think it's like it would be foolish to ignore this, but it's a thing that's kept me up at night. It keeps a lot of Bitcoiners up at night. We don't talk enough about those Bitcoiners, right? The people are like very grateful about the work that I'm doing. But regardless, there's there's just like a loud contingent community of ossifiers, and like the thing is like they're loud and like present, but there's also like a lot of smart people who don't talk about this that are actually in charge, and they will probably make the right choice uh, if the time makes it like relevant, right? Like if it becomes obvious, if the right choice becomes obvious, I think the people, all the decision makers in Bitcoin, and there are hundreds or thousands. It's not just like one big, like whatever, but there's lots of individual decision makers that will probably just be like, okay, it's about time, and like there'll be consensus formed amongst the people who actually matter, not plebs, and sorry to say this, but like plebs like literally do not matter. Like node runners, like there is like the UASF, but a UASF has never occurred. It's not like it's just a threat, and so like like there's a lot of threats, right? Like there's a lot of threats, and so yeah. Anyway, I'm not too worried about the plebs. I'm more worried about like like the mining Illuminati and the economic node runners, ETF people, those are the people that'll like really kind of force the hand, right?
When we started the interview, you mentioned that you only have 1 hour 20 minutes. Is
That's
that
true.
hard cap still in place?
It is.
So you have to go now?
I do.
Oh no. I gotta tell the people the funny story about how we basically ended up doing this interview. And also have two more sponsors to plug. So let me plug the sponsors, then I tell the story. Noonce.com is a peer-to-peer exchange that aims to empower the global south. It's a place where you can buy and sell gift cards using Bitcoin, Monero, and a bunch of other coins, mostly stable coins. And they also offer a spot exchange and a debit card if you want to spend your coins. Check it out. Basically, if you're using this platform, you're giving liquidity to Africans and people from the Middle East who are basically 90% of the users. And the CEO, Ray Youssef, is very adamant about trying to provide tools to the people who need them the most and not the ones who just speculate. So check it out. It's noones.com. And last but not least, and I'm sorry that you guys are last, but Bitcoin.com has recently rebranded. They're orange now, and their news website is pretty good. I'm actually the one who reached out to them because I saw that they have a more diverse approach to news. The URL is news.bitcoin.com, and they have also news about gold, about silver, about Bitcoin adoption in countries that are not the US. And I think it's pretty good. If you want to escape the Bitcoin magazine bubble and want to find out more stuff that's happening around the world, I think Bitcoin.com News does a pretty good job. So check them out. And now let me tell the story about how this interview actually happened. It wasn't some conversation about quantum computing. I just tweeted after seeing some clips from the Hunter Biden interview that it would be fun to have Hunter Biden on my podcast because he seems to be the kind of guy who actually spent Bitcoin on fun stuff. And fun, I mean, by fun, I mean that it was fun for himself, possibly not the people who are also involved in his fun. But he seems very outspoken nowadays, and maybe he has some interesting stories to tell. And then you, Hunter Beast, replied and said, I would happily be the hunter who gets interviewed on your show. And I was like, yeah, I've actually been meaning to do this interview. I just didn't know how to approach you. So I'm happy that
Yeah,
this happened.
I'm happy too. Yeah, that was great.
For the people who have been listening, you mentioned in the beginning, and I'm sorry I'm keeping you past the established time. You mentioned that there are some good practices that they can use to avoid being exposed to a quantum attack. And I think this is a good way to end this. Like, what are some good ways? You mentioned avoiding reusing addresses, but what else to
Yeah.
basically put
So
yourself in a better position?
yeah, so let's first define address reuse as essentially if you were to spend your from a specific address, if you spend from that address and then receive coins to it again, now those coins are vulnerable. So don't do that. Always use a new address whenever you receive new payments, and either that or make sure that the address that you are receiving to hasn't yet been spent from, and then you just consolidate all those UTXOs and spend them all at once, leaving none in that address where the public key is now exposed. There's also like BC1Q, like native SegWit addresses, those are perfectly fine. Like you can definitely don't expose your XPub to anybody. One addresses and three addresses probably also fine, so long as you don't reuse them. And so yeah, like just sticking with BC1Q, like native SegWit addresses, like those are great. And that's like if you're just doing like everything a normal Bitcoiner should, like a diligent like Bitcoiner who has like a foundation passport or a cold card or whatever, then yeah, like you should be good. You should be fine. Uh, it's just when you go into Taproot, when you go into like just don't hodl in Taproot. Don't hodl in reused addresses. And if things ever get really bad, you can take your transaction to a private mempool like Mara's Slipstream, and that will allow you to bypass the public mempool, and so you'll get your transaction mined out of band or sort of like out of privately, and so then you can you never expose your public key to potential attackers if you're moving a particularly large amount. That might be prudent to do in the future sometime, but it's always an option. So I would say, yeah, hodl in BC1Q. If you're using multisig, never reveal your XPub to anybody. Like encrypt that, whatever. Do something to protect it. And then, because your descriptor, your XPub, like your descriptor has out your XPubs, just so you know. And so, anyway, regardless, yeah, those are the suggestions.
Thank you very much, Hunter Beast. I'm sorry you have to go. It was partially my fault that we started this later. But I'm really grateful for the input that you have given. And I'm happy that we had this conversation about quantum computing. And I wish you all the best with BIP 360.
Thank you very much, Vlad. Take care now.